Let me start by being honest with you. This TED Talk has been the hardest thing I've done all year. In 2020, a year full of many dramatic changes for all of us, where all of us have been called on to do hard things, this has been my heaviest boulder and my highest mountain, all rolled into one. Why? It's not because I have a fear of public speaking. It's really because I'm used to a whole different format. I like speaking when I'm standing in front of an audience with a mic and on a stage. This Corona necessitated format has thrown my usual speaking style completely off. So as I sit here uncomfortably on my comfortable sofa, I'd like to share an idea with you that I hope will help you throughout your life whenever you too experience the complete discomfort that change brings. We all want the familiar. Ironically, sitting on a comfortable sofa in comfy pants is pretty much what we all want. At a movie, some pizza, and all is well in the world. This is what familiar looks like. Change is like an earthquake. It arrives like an unwelcome guest in the middle of your favorite show, and it rudely pushes you off your sofa and you end up on the cold floor with your pizza on your lap. I have lived a life of change, and I've been thrown off that sofa so many times I don't even care to admit it, which is why change is my TEDx topic. I've lived in many different countries, and each time I've moved, I've had to reinvent my career. Why? Why would anyone sane do this? Because I'm married to a career diplomat, and we are a diplomatic family. If you heard diplomatic and somehow thought that it was glamorous, let me tell you, it is most definitely not. It is less globe-trotting and much more turtle-trotting. What we do is we put our whole world on our back, and when we get to a new country, we put our load down and then try to live as normal a life as we can. And we do this every 4 years or so. Moving is one of the 5 most stressful life experiences in most people's lives. Think about the number of times you've moved, multiply that by about 5 or 10, and that's how often we move. So like most diplomatic families, I know a thing or two about change and how to make it work for me. Change, it's a really funny beast. It's one of the most universal of experiences, and yet most of us never feel ready to deal with it. Our most recent move was in July 2020, in the middle of the global travel ban with borders closing everywhere thanks to COVID-19. We planned for some of it, and we knew we would move back in 2020, but we didn't know that this pandemic would insert itself smack bang in the middle of our plans and complicate just about everything, from booking our movers and our flights to immigration to school applications. And that just describes the 2 very important aspects of change. The operational, the part that you have to do, the list of things you have to do. And then there's the emotional, the mental gymnastics you have to do to deal with the many moving parts of change. The operational part is what's written and talked about the most. When we think about change, if we think about change at all, this is the aspect we focus on, the list-making part of us. And for those of us who love lists, this is where we thrive. Excel spreadsheets are made for this. It is our intellect imposing order on the chaos that change always brings. What I've come to realize with living a life of change is that more than the operational, we must address the emotional aspects of change. Have a look at this picture. When we finally got on one of the rare flights that was still operating, this was the stewardess on our flight. The obvious thing you notice is her outfit, and this is the operational. The changes that airlines had to implement if they wanted to keep flying. Equipping their staff and passengers with masks, shields, personal protective equipment. The invisible part that you cannot see in this picture is the emotional change that had to happen for that stewardess to do her job in these conditions. She used to travel the world in a nice, stylish uniform with her face beautifully made up. Now she's wearing a plastic jumpsuit with a mask and safety goggles. She has to deliver the same level of service, but she also has to enforce not just seatbelt rules, but masks and distancing as well. So my contention is that the biggest and most powerful change and leap for her was emotional. It happened when she decided she could and would work in this new normal. This is also the biggest and most powerful leap for all of us. Managing our emotional reaction to change is the magic that turns resistance into resilience. And how can we do this? We can do this by nurturing good mental habits. It is only in building lifelong change-ready habits that we can be ready for any kind of crazy that life delivers. And that's what I'd like to share with you today. The habits of change rather than the process. The process is important, don't get me wrong, but the reason that change continues to be difficult for people and organizations is not because we don't know the process. It's because we don't acknowledge the emotional aspects of change. We don't make the time or the space for it. So the first habit of change is to help yourself. Self-care is the most important thing you can do for yourself. On that same flight that we took, the safety announcement told us to put the oxygen masks on ourselves first before assisting anyone else. That's because if you can't breathe, you cannot help anyone. So taking care of yourself is the most selfless thing you can do. You are of no use to anyone if you don't. One shortcut to self-care is to release yourself from any idea that there is anything desirable about normal. Never mind normal is my own personal mantra, and it's crucial for my mental health. Maya Angelou said that if you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. This has certainly been my own experience. Let me share a picture of my family with you. This is my family. We are a blended family. I know our family does not look like a normal family. My husband and I are both in our second marriage. And when I married my husband, he already had 4 children. So I took on 4 stepchildren when I married him. I was 38 at the time, with no children and a failed marriage behind me. We married and had another child to give us a total of 5 children. So at 38, I went from no family to big family, all in an instant. Our children look very different from each other, and we are a large family of 7 with children aged from 10 to 30. If I'd been concerned about normal, I would not have the wonderful family that I have today. When we focus on normal too much, we sometimes sacrifice the truth. And it's crucial that we live our truth because it grounds us in times of change. I know this to be true, oddly enough, because of my hair. This is my natural hair. And as you can see, I have rather wild curls. After my first day in primary school in Singapore, my teachers called up my parents and insisted that I could not come to school like this. My hair was all wrong for school and would have to be tamed into tight braids. So you can understand why, as soon as I was a teenager, I started to straighten my hair. My entire youth was spent wishing for the shiny, straight hair of everyone around me. It was much later that I learned to accept and embrace my curls, and almost instantly, I felt a weight lifted. I was no longer trying to be normal. I was showing up as the real me, curls and all. So letting go of any idea of normal and practicing self-care is not something you can do overnight. We are all a work in progress. We do it one step at a time, but it is absolutely crucial. The second step that's helped me through a life of constant change is something I learned in my 20s, and that is to make it a habit to help others. This is a habit that has served me well through change, community, and contribution. From my very first job, I've always had an additional role of some sort in a volunteer capacity. Whether it was on the board of a charity or just helping out on the ground, I'm constantly seeking tribes or communities, and I belong to many, many different groups. I do this to help others, but also to help myself. This is a picture of the 14 women that I wrote the book, Unleash Your Voice, Powerful Public Speaking for Every Woman with. Even my first book was collaborative. Our goal was to help women around the world express their ideas confidently. The book we created went on to be an Amazon bestseller, and I've received notes from so many women around the world expressing gratitude for the change that the book had brought them. This other picture that I'd like to share is with some of the board of the Singapore Council for Women's Organizations, SCWO, where I just recently stepped down as vice president. We are pictured with the first woman president of Singapore, Madam Halima Yaacob, at an exhibition called The Lives of Women. The progress that women have made over the decades in Singapore has been championed by many of these women. Helping solve the problems that women experience and working to ensure that their potential can flourish is some of the most rewarding of my life. Nothing puts your own problems into perspective more than helping others solve their problems. I'll be honest, working together is often slower and it can be frustrating at times, but it delivers so many more rewards. The third habit that has served me well in embracing change is taking risks and saying yes to opportunities. It's easier to stay in our comfort zones, to stay on our sofa. I know, I often don't want to embrace the crazy either. And this talk, as I've said, is a perfect example. I want what is familiar. I want to stand on a stage with a mic and an audience. I resisted this change at first. And it's only thanks to the encouragement and patience of the TEDx team at Ngee Ann Polytechnic that this talk even exists. So to do this talk, I relied on the TEDx Ngee Ann Poly community and on my habits of change to overcome my initial resistance. The irony is not lost on me. This pushed me off my familiarity sofa by delivering my TED Talk on my literal sofa. So change is crazy. And it's so very uncomfortable. Staying on our sofa and maintaining the status quo is so much easier. It's so much more comfortable, it's so much more familiar, but nothing new happens in the land of the familiar. Nothing exciting, nothing amazing. Amazing is hidden in the unknown. Amazing always lurks behind risk. Many years ago, I served on the board of HCA Hospice Care. Hospice is care for people who are at the end of their lives with a prognosis of under 6 months. At the end of their lives, every single person, whatever their background, was concerned with their legacy. And when they talked about their legacy, the only thing that caused them regret and pain were the chances they did not take, the risks that passed them by because they chose to stay with the familiar, to stay on their sofa. The things that you will regret are the things that you didn't do, much more than the things you did and that might have gone wrong, because nothing stings as painfully as opportunity lost. This is the truth behind Tennyson's poem, "'Tis better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all." It doesn't just apply to matters of the heart. It applies to every aspect of our lives. Everyone has a different appetite for risk, though. The question to ask yourself is if this risk is also an opportunity and if it is in line with the compass of your life. Resisting change is a natural reaction. It is for everyone. We are all a work in progress. No one is done and perfect. I'd like to share this slide with you now. It was made some time ago by a client who hired me to speak and then made this to introduce me. It's some of the public highlights of my professional life. Every picture is true. It's not fake news. I have been in the news and I have received awards. This is all true. But this is also completely inconsequential. It isn't the core of me. It's only a very small fragment of my life. This is my curated life, not my lived experience. This is what I call my shiny little corner. The shiny corner has a very important purpose, though. It helps me to remind myself of some of the best things that I've done so far in my life. Just like athletes have a trophy wall, I have a shiny little corner. And I encourage you to have your own shiny little corner. Curate whatever highlights you have in your life. Anything from your exam grades to photos of your best friends. It's entirely up to you what you put in. But choose things that remind you of your successes, because most of your days will not be highlights. Some of our days will be downright difficult. But remembering the highlights, looking at your shiny little corner, will help you to remember all the good things that have happened to you and that you've done the best of your life. Use it to be your own inspiration. Your inspiration to get off the sofa of familiarity. You should also remember that every overnight success takes years, if not decades, of effort. Take it one step at a time, one risk at a time. This picture on the left is a typical picture of me you'll find if you Google my name. On the right is a less Googleable picture, a picture of me at about 6, just before I started primary school. In between, a lot happened. Some of it was good, some of it was bad, but all of it made me who I am today. There was always effort. And each time I got off the sofa of familiarity, I did it one step at a time. It's the same with risk. You don't have to dial it all up in one move. Push your boundaries or your comfort zone out one notch at a time. And while you're doing that, resist the temptation to compare yourself to what you see around you, especially online. Comparison is the thief of joy, and social media has magnified that exponentially. When you look at the best part of someone's life, don't compare it to the worst part of yours. You don't know their challenges. You don't know their journey. What you see is just what's visible on the surface. They too are doing it one step at a time. These habits, they've helped me immensely over the years. It even helped me today to present this talk from our sofa in our home of 3 months in Berlin in a format that's new to me. On our postings, I've met many international families. The ones that succeed without breaking down, they all develop habits like these to break down our natural resistance to change. Small actions can lead to big results with time and timing. And that is the power of the butterfly effect. The changes you make in yourself, when you stop resisting change, when you invest in the effort to be ready to face change, when you practice self-care, when you build relationships and help others, when you take risks, these habits build our emotional muscles for change. And that is how you and I can change the world. One crazy change at a time. I'm Lavinia Thanapathy, and this is my idea worth sharing.